And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so church office, census process, what does that look like? I mentioned earlier there's a couple processes that you can do to manage your census. Let's take a look at the older way, and then let's take a look at what we would recommend, the current processes. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to our PDS program, and let's go to reports. Now, under reports, we're going to go to family reports. And if I look at my family reports, I'm going to have a bunch of them. I want to go to my listing section. Now, looking down our listing section, about halfway down, we have family registration form and we have family blank registration form. Okay, so clearly the one that's has data in it can be given to your families that are registered in your system, where they can go and they can mark up any information that needs to be manually fixed in PDS, right? Again, it's a very manual process. You print out a report, depending on how many pages of data they have, they're going to get that many pages, and then they're going to give that back to you. You have your blank registration form. Let me just click on the preview for that one. So this is going to give you a blank page. You're going to hand this to any new parishioners and have them fill it out, and again return that back to you. Again, a very manual process to get that data in, but this is the old way of doing it, and this has been in place for many years, ever since the program was put out in the late 70s, I believe. But very useful tool, but there are more efficient ways of getting that data of your new parishioners or changes, address changes, information about those families into your system a little bit more efficiently. Let's go take a look at those. All right, so we're going to back out of the church office reporting process for now. I'm just going to go back to the home screen. From the home screen, I'm going to jump over to the processes tab. And inside processes, I'm going to go to my family processes. Now, under family processes, we also have a family processes menu. Okay, so you're kind of going into processes, and then family processes again. Now, inside the family processes menu, you're going to look over on your right-hand column towards the bottom, the family online registration. Okay, and you'll see here there's two things we can do. We can create a web form that we can post on our website and host it on our web, link to it from the home page if we need to, and families can go there and fill out that information that we want them to complete. They can submit that, and then you'll get an email notification about that registration, that it's ready to be brought into your program. And then you also have the ability to create an email that goes out to families who are in your system and that you have a valid email address for. So that's a different version of that communication, where you're sending it directly to the families, simply asking them to check the data, validate, update the information that might need to be updated, and then submit that back to you. Any new members of the family are also, what they might be adding to that form. Let's go take a look at that. So click on Family Online Registration. Now you're going to see that there's actually two tasks that we can do here. So the bottom half is creating the form or creating the email version of that form that I just mentioned. The top piece is when you get that email notification, you want to come into this first section and check and register those families in. Okay, so it's a two-step process. Now, the next thing we want to do is determine what type of form we want to create. We're going to focus today on the web registration form, and then I'm going to also show you that email and what the difference is between the two. Now, I'm going to click on the web registration form and then click Next. Okay. The next page is simply explaining how it works. So, pretty much what I just mentioned to you earlier. I'm going to click Next. All right. Now the next page, now we're getting into some of the details of what we want this form to do. So we give it a form name, okay, family registration form, or you can change that name if you want. If you want to put a background picture, you can put a background picture on the form. That could be your picture of your parish, whatever you wish to appear as far as a background. And then you also want to put in a brief introduction about what this form is. Okay. And this could be whatever wording you feel is appropriate for the introduction of the form. All right. Now, going down, you'll see that we can also, press Control Enter if we want a new line to appear on our introduction, or we can put in brackets if we want to put in a URL or a link on that form as well. All right, now moving on down, we've got our sections to include in the form. Now notice we have English and Spanish versions. Okay, so you can build it in English or in Spanish, or both for that matter. Now, let's go ahead and focus on the English version, and let's look at the next sections. Now, you'll see here that the form does have required fields. So there are fields that are going to be marked with an asterisk that they have to fill out in order to hit that submit button. So head of family is required, spouse is not required, street address required, family phone number. Now you can also add and ask for the number of phone numbers we want to include. Okay, so if you want to put the ability to add multiple phone numbers or multiple emails, you can select the boxes on the right-hand side. Back to the left-hand side, do we want to include things like family keywords or remarks? Typically, we don't. Usually that keywords and remarks are data that are, they're important and they mean something to you in the parish office, but may not be meaningful to a family that's registering. You can also ask for alternate addresses, and you can also ask for pledges as well. Now, down below on the right-hand side, you can include sections for sacraments, sacrament places, and keywords as well. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in sacraments and sacrament places so that we have those as sections that we can add more fields to in the next step. Okay. Looks like a few folks are joining in, so let me just pause here for just a moment and let those folks in. Okay. All right, so moving to the next page, we're going to click Next. And now, remember that we were asking for sacraments, so now we need to determine what field names we want to appear for the sacraments. And then click on the drop-down, and we can go ahead and choose that we want baptism. So remember, Sacrament 1 was the only option that we chose. If I click on the back, and we want to include additional sacraments, let's go back. Okay. We could include, let's see, keywords, phones, emails. Let's go ahead and leave that there. I think that's probably my my data here. That is missing that additional information, but no worries. Yours will have the proper information in there. So sacraments, sacrament places. I'm going to go and click on Next. Now, if we want to add additional sacraments, just click on the plus button. And Sacrament 2, maybe we want baptism. Let's see. First Communion. And depending on the number of sacraments that you want to ask for details on the members that are being registered, just go ahead and plug in additional sacraments. Maybe confirmation. Okay. All right, so because we asked for sacraments, those are the options that we're going to choose. And let's go ahead and click Next. All right, now on the next page is going to be the different drop downs that we want to have display for when the families are filling out information. So the first top left section is relationships. Now, what I would always recommend here is if you look at any one of your drop-down lists, which are keyworded lists, you probably don't want to display every single option and version that you have for a relationship. So maybe what you do is choose the most common ones, right? So click on Clear All, and let's just go ahead and scroll down. It's in alphabetical order. So let's go ahead and just scroll up. Okay, so spouse, we'll keep that one. Okay, other might be a good choice. Again, your list might look much different than mine. So we're going to choose, again, the most common relationship types. Head and maybe child. Okay. So we're only selecting 4 entries and then excluding all these other different versions from our drop-down list. Okay. Now later on, if you need to change those to something different, you can manage those inside the data once you've imported that record in. And then do the same thing. So you've got your titles. What I would recommend here under titles is if you look, you'll see that, again, a lot of different choices. And also there's many, many different titles for military. Now, if you're in a military town, that would make sense to keep those in there. So what you want to do is consider not bringing over all of them, again, clearing all, but bringing over your most common, your Mr., your Mrs., your Miss, your doctor, down, maybe Senor, Senora, moving down. And then if you want to, you can then pick and choose which information you want as far as the abbreviations for military, if that's appropriate. But for this example, I'm going to go ahead and stick with our 7 entries. Okay. All right, moving on down. Our phone numbers, our phone types. You might have this in your data. Okay, this is just indication that you might need to do a little bit of cleanup during the combine process to move those to their proper descriptions. But you might have his cell, her cell, John's cell, Mary's cell. Okay, we don't want to put those on the drop downs. We want to put down just the common ones. So maybe you want to keep work, other, cell, mobile, and home. Okay, and just keep it to that list. Ooh, look, I have home and I have home phone. Again, we can combine those. So when I talk about the combining of sacraments, then I'm also going to just mention that the same process is very similar processes used for your combining of description types. Okay, I'm going to keep home as the one we want. And it's important that we do this because as part of your, you want to get data out of your program. So you need to make sure that your keywords, you don't have more than one meaning for each keyword. So in this case here, we do, so it just needs a little bit of cleanup. But I left this in our sample data to point that out as well. All right, so looking at our list, we have other, work, cell, mobile, home. Ooh, we have office and cellular again, so I'm going to uncheck those. All right, and then the last one's going to be email types. So how about we keep other and primary? Right? Everything else we don't want to exclude. Again, these are drop downs that we're setting up. Let's click next and get to the next screen, which is all the other fields. Okay, now this might look overwhelming because it's displaying a lot of information. So what you're going to do, notice that we have on the right-hand side the required fields. Those are the ones that are going to have the asterisks on them, data that we need in order for those the forms to be submitted. But we don't need everything. What I would recommend that you do here is keep what's selected for you. Build a sample of your form, and if it looks overwhelming or you're asking for too much information, then you can always come back here and then uncheck some of these items as well. Okay. All right. Now from here, we can choose, how do we want to view this? Do we want to use the desktop view, or do we want to produce a mobile-friendly view for phones and tablets? I'm going to go ahead and keep the desktop view and click on Preview Form so you all can see what that form looks like, at least from the settings that we've chosen so far. So this is the form. You have control over what the form format looks like, as far as like the text or the background colors, by editing the actual HTML and web page files that are created. So you can get a little bit creative editing what the form looks like beyond what you're seeing here, if you want to venture out and make modifications to those web files that are created. But this is the standard form, and this is what it would look like if you just take those files and upload those directly to your website. All right, so we've got a submit form and a clear form button up on top. All right, so we're not ready to submit. We're not ready to clear because we didn't make any mistakes. Asterisks, red asterisks, are the required fields, so we can't ignore those. We have to fill those out. And then look here, we can choose to register as a new family, or we can update existing family information. But the only way that that works is if we know our ID number, okay? So as a family, I need to know what my ID envelope number is. If I know what it is, I can use this field with this option to update, and update just the information that has changed, okay? So make sure that if you want to give that option to your families, that you are kind of giving them a little bit of instruction on what they need to do by putting in that ID number. Okay, so you move on. Here's our register a new family process. And you're just going to have them choose from the drop-down. There's our limited list that we selected before. Okay. And you just start filling out the form. Okay. Now, again, once you fill out all the required fields, moving on down, there's our sacrament fields that we were asking for. So notice it's a breakdown by member information. So here's our head, here's the spouse member detail, here's the family information, so address, contact numbers, emails, and then down below is our member section. So the additional members beyond head and spouse is down below. If the family has 5 children, then they fill out the first child first, and then click add another member, and just do that multiple times to fill out the information for each of their children. And they only have to fill out what they know. You know, they may not have all the information about sacraments. Maybe they know that it was received, but they don't know the date. Okay, so at least that's more information that you knew before they filled out the form. The sacrament place. Okay, see how that's created. Now, if you create this and you're looking at the form, you haven't uploaded it yet, and you see what would be like duplicates, right? Maybe spelling slightly different, but it's clearly the same place. It's just listed twice or more than once. Then that means that we need to combine those sacrament places. And we'll be talking about that later in the hour. Okay. All right. So that's the form. Now, they can hit submit. And as soon as they hit submit, you can also redirect them to another page, right? So maybe there's another page that you want to send them to on your website. Just simply redirect them to that page after they hit the submit button. If they've made a mistake, they can hit clear form, go to the top, and then start filling it out again. Yeah. So pretty straightforward, but a much more efficient, easier method for them to fill out the information. And then on the back end, once it's filled out, to get that data into the program. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to close this preview. Again, it's just a preview. There's still a little bit of work we need to do, but we verified, okay, everything looking good so far. Let's go ahead and click next. And now the next page is where we tell the process when the form is filled out, what email at your parish gets that notification. Okay? So the person that manages that email will receive a notification saying the John Smith family registered. And then that's a cue for you to go in and go to that back to that online registration process and choose that top option that I mentioned before. So I'll show you that where that is when we're finished here. Returning email message to a family, right? So once they register, you can also send them an email thanking them for registering, and then any other detailed information that needs to go out to them. Does the registration form create a link that we can put on our website? It doesn't create a link because you are actually managing those files. So the registration form will create a set of web files. Those web files then need to be uploaded to a space on your website. So your webmaster will need to do that. And then your webmaster will create the link to the form, okay, from your homepage or wherever that needs to be. All right, so we're just creating the files. Claire, the information doesn't go directly to our database. You have to initiate the process to pull that data in, and then you're going to actually see all the detail of the family, and then choose to bring that in or not, and choose what to bring in. In the case where the family is updating their information, you can choose what information to accept into your database and what to reject. You have full control over that. Okay, if you're redirecting, this is where you can redirect them to. Okay, and then you can set a time on when to redirect. Okay, so all right, so when you click next, this is where you're going to tell it, again, the layout. So do we want the desktop view or the mobile friendly view? Do we want to create multiple files or a single file? We're going to create multiple files, and then we need to tell it where that data is going to go. So you can store the web files initially on your computer, and then you can then tell it or upload it to your website after you've viewed it, verified it, looked at everything, looks okay local, then you can go ahead and upload it. Again, you can always go back and make changes. I already have files sitting in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just choose to overwrite those. And I'm gonna go ahead and just save it right here in my data directory. Okay, so that's where it's gonna land. So I'm just gonna copy that out and I'm gonna hit finish. So we'll go ahead and let it build those web files out. Okay, so it's done, and that's where it landed. I'm going to open the folder. Now, in your case, since you are on demand, that step that I was just on where I saved the file, you just want to make sure that you are saving it to your local PC, right? So that's your J drive. So send it to your J drive and then tell it where on the J drive to send those files. That way you can open that file up locally and see what it looks like. Now, in my case, I went ahead and just saved it into the training data folder. And right here, I'm just going to sort by date. Here's those files that I just created. I'm going to highlight them here for you. Okay. So we've got the online registration INI file. There's the HTML file. We have a README file, a cascading style sheet file, and a JavaScript file. Let's go ahead and open up that HTML file. And here's what it looks like. Okay, so we're no longer previewing the file from within the tool. This is actually a version of the HTML file. Okay. So if you're looking at this now and then you realize, oh, I forgot to ask for a certain piece of data, no worries. You haven't uploaded anything. Just go back into the step of creating the file and choose those proper fields. Or if you're asking for more data than you need, remove those fields. Okay. You can choose to hide the spouse information. So for those single member families. All right, so pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and close this view for now. Just move it over. Again, these are our files. Now, if you're very, savvy, you can open up that HTML file. I'm going to open it up with Notepad here. Okay, and you can make additional changes. It's your web page to make whatever changes you need to. Just know that any changes that you make will affect what that form looks like. So you got to be real careful and only stick with making changes that you know what you're doing. All right, let's go ahead and close that. Minimize that. Get back to our screen. Now, once you get those emails that families have registered or updated their information, just go back. So let's go back to our home screen. You're going to go back to Family Processes. Back to Family Processes again. Choose your online registration, but this time you're going to choose to check and register those families. I'm going to click Next. Now, because it has a potential of changing a lot of data at one time, you want to make a backup. I always recommend that if the program prompts you to make a backup, you probably should make a backup. Now, I'm going to break that rule because of time purposes, and I'm going to say no. And now I'm going to show you what that information looks like. Okay. All right, so now in my sample database, it's showing that we have some families that have registered. It's been a few months, but there's no time limit on when you have to go in there and pull this information in. But you want to be, when you get that email, you're going to want to set a task to go in there and do it sooner than later. Now you can also, after you bring that information in, you can delete the form. Okay, so remove that form so it's no longer sitting out there and displaying for you on this page. It will, you can choose to delete it. So we've got James Anderson, Joseph Anderson, and we've got some information that is being brought in as a new family and updated information, all right? So let me show you what the updated information looks like first. I'm going to select James Anderson, and it's going to load that data for me. Now notice that we have the updated information coming in on the left-hand side. So this is what the family has filled out. And on the right-hand side is what we have in our PDS program, okay? So think of this as a split view. What's coming in from the form, what you have in your data. So we can see here, 265 North Harris Drive, same address, but look here, we've got Phoenix and we have Mesa. So what's the correct city? Again, you have full control. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and choose the proper one. So if he's correcting it, I'm going to choose Phoenix because they probably know more than I do about their correct address. Moving on down. Again, this is just sample data, so again, changes that are coming in. Now you'll see that some have blank information. So what we have in the database is blank for the phone type, and we have something that's coming on the form. So go ahead and select what's on the form. Phone number's changing. Do we want to unlist it? Email, personal, blank. Okay, so we can choose as much correct information of what's coming in versus what we have in the data. Okay. Let's see what else is different. Okay, so St. Augustine. Okay, we'll bring that in. Street zip, we'll bring that one in. And we want to address any changes that are coming in. So we got James in June. Let's go ahead and select James. and register date. Okay, so everything has been selected. Notice that everything changed. Watch when I deselect. Oh, it didn't do it, but really what you're looking for is all of your blues changing to green. Okay, that means that you have made all of the selections that need to be made so that you can go ahead and process. Now, if you want, you can also say, I want to see the differences. So don't show me all the detail, just the differences. And then you can go ahead and process. Now, we're not ready to process all yet because we still have some additionals to bring in. So we've got Joseph and we've got Angelique that are ready to be brought in as new families. So let's go ahead and select Joseph and see his information. Okay, let's go ahead and select Joseph, put a checkbox on him. Notice there's nothing on the right because we don't have a Joseph Anderson in our database. This is a new registration. Okay. So the program's automatically assigning an ID number because that's what our current settings are in our ID number options. Down below, we're just verifying everything is correct. Okay. If we see anything that's pointing out to us that there's a misspelling, city state is wrong or something, you can go ahead and fix those here. Okay. Little note here too, you can correct any data if needed. Okay, that looks good. Let's go ahead and look at Angelique. Okay. And Angelique looks good as well. So we'll select her. All right, so now we can choose to process all. And it's when I hit that process all where it's going to bring that data into my program. Do I want to print a list? Sure, let's go ahead and print a list of those families. Okay, so there's Joseph Anderson, there's Angelique, and there's James. Now I'm going to go ahead and print that out to a PDF just so that I can have that handy. Okay, and I'm going to close. So I'm done. I've finished the process. I've gone through and I've built my web page, and then I've actually gone through and pulled that data in. Do you want to check and register families again? No, I'm done with the process. Now, the other step to that was the creation of the email form. It's very similar to what we were talking about earlier as far as setting up what data we want to ask. The only difference is when this form gets created, you email it out to families that you have email and addresses for. And then you can then choose which of those families actually get the email. When they get the email, they're going to click on a link that takes them to the form, and then they can then fill that information out, and that goes back to you. And then just like we did before in that prior process, you'll see those come in as updated registration information. Okay. So I'm not going to go through that form process again because it's the same, but just wanted to show you all what that looks like. Actually, let me just go ahead and do them. I'm going to mark all on these here just so we can see quickly what that form looks like. We'll just choose one of those. All right, so here's that information like we saw before. Again, there's the information. And then down below, see how we have the email registration option? So email form to update existing families, or email a blank form for new families if we have their email, right? We still need that. Send a registration form to existing families to update their records. You can also include inactive records on those. When we click next, let me put in my email here. Okay, so now this is the process where you have to select, okay, who's going to get those emails now? Okay, so this is where you need to select the proper families, and then it's very similar to like your emailing process when you are, producing a letter that gets emailed to your families, similar to that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there and not continue on with that step. but just know that's this very similar process. So let's cancel out of this. And let's go ahead and toggle back over to our agenda. Bear with me here. That over. All right, so that was the census process, family emails. The next thing I want to show you all is the quick posting of family pictures. Okay. Now, I understand that that you might be receiving families photos that need to be attached to the records. That could be in the form of a CD or a thumb drive, or maybe you're logging in and downloading that information, those files, those images off of a web page. Ultimately, you're going to have a number of photos in your possession that need to be connected up to your families. Now, the idea behind that is when you go to your family screen, let's just jump over to information and families here, is that you have a phone number, a photo attached to your family or to your member records. Okay. Now, in my example, I have just a couple families that I want to show this on, but we're going to use a quick posting process to do it. So we've got the Jonathan and Kathy Ramirez. There's no photo here for them, but we have a photo that can be attached. And also for my family, we have no photo here too, okay? So we want to just do as best we can to get that in the most efficient way to get those photos connected to those records. Now, in my example, I only have 2 families, but this can work the same way for 500 families, 1,000 families, okay? So where do you start? So you go to your homepage, start with processes. It's a family process because we're posting family photos. And then we're going to choose the family processes. I'm sorry, quick posting. And over here on the left-hand column is your family pictures. Go ahead and choose that. Now, there's 2 methods of entering this information. We can do it automatically by selecting families, or we can do it the individual method. So whatever is most efficient for you, you can choose that option. Now, if I choose automatic, what I could choose is, how about I want to use a selection, and I want to find basic information. So how about family basic? And let's scroll down here. Those numbers. Yeah, so how about, let's just use city, okay, as an example. So city is equal to Phoenix. Okay. All right, so now what do I want to do? Do I want to assign pictures to the selected families individually, or do I want to assign the same picture or remove pictures? I want to assign pictures individually. So let's click next. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me a list of all my families in Phoenix. Okay, so versus looking up each individual family, we can do that. Now, if we look in my example, let's see, I think Ramirez was one of them. So I can go find Ramirez from this list. Again, it's in alphabetical order. So there's Jonathan and Kathy. Now, what I can do is I can clear all, because I'm not posting to everybody. I'm just posting to Ramirez. So I select Ramirez, and now I need to go find where that file is. So I'm going to go click on Choose File. And now in mine happens to be in a folder. Go ahead and go to my COM training folder, and it's called Family Photos. Now, the family photos folder I manually created the family photos. It could be anywhere. It could be on your desktop. It could be on a thumb drive. But really what you want to do is you want to take all of your photos and put them on a place where then you can then get to them from on demand. Okay. So I went ahead and created a folder called Family Photos, and see how we've got a John Ramirez family and a Mike Perales family. That's not me or my wife. That's just a stock photo that I found for this example. But see how we've got the naming convention? Now yours hopefully your photos have names or ID numbers, something where you can say this file belongs to this family. Okay. So hopefully you have that. I'm going to choose John Ramirez because I'm attaching it to that record, and I'm going to click on open. So you'll see here, it gives me a preview, and now I've linked that family. Now I'm not finished with the process. I still have to actually post it, but I can go ahead and continue on. So the other one was my record. So let's go ahead and find mine. Here we are. Oh, look at that. We've got 2 Mike Peraleses. So that's a good combined families example in the next step. All right, so let's go ahead and choose my current record. Click on the choose file. Make sure that we're pointing to our directory. And then open. Okay. Now, another thing that you can do here is in PDS, there is a directory that stores these photos. You can choose to take all your photos and upload those to your photo directory in On Demand. So what that's going to look like for you all, imagine you're on Demand and you're looking at your data folder. So that's your S drive. And under S drive, when you go to your folder, you're going to see a data folder. And inside the data folder, if you sort that, you'll see a pictures folder. All right, so this is where your program is looking for those photos. Okay, so you can take an extra step beforehand and just upload all your photos to your pictures directory. And then it's going to be looking for those photos here, and then you don't have to point to that other location like I was doing. That was like an extra step. So you can take that extra step out by just uploading all your photos here. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to our program. So we've got our 2 photos here. Go ahead and click next. Okay. All right, so click finish to post. We can also print a list. I'm going to choose not to print that list and then just hit finish. Okay. Do you want to enter pictures for another group of families? I'm going to say no. All right, so now if I go to my families, let's go ahead and just pull up Ramirez first. All right. And there he is. Now, I am noticing here that it is linking it back to that location. So I'm going to make a correction here from earlier what I did. Right. So instead of pointing to a different folder other than your directory, your default directory, go ahead and move those photos directly over. Okay. So here's what I'm going to suggest. If you go to File, go to Setup, and go to Initial Setup. All right. You'll have a default directory for your pictures and for your documents. This is what we are talking about. So what I should do is I should copy this, and I'm going to move those photos that I just copied over to those 2 photos over to that directory. Okay. So bear with me here. I'm going to go back to my main directory. So these photos here, these really should be moved. I'm going to cut them. And I'm going to move those to my data directory where that pictures folder is right here. I'm going to drop them right here. You would do the same, but in On Demand. All right, so there they are. All right, so now when I'm posting, I don't have to point directly to that other location. what I want to do is go to my families. See, John, see how that's no longer there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point not to that photo directory, but I'm going to point to my ComFom data directory to sort by data, pictures, and Ramirez. Okay, so here's where all the other ones live. Let me just do a details here, sort by name, and there's Ramirez. All right, so now I've connected it to the proper location, and that's really the best way to do it. Okay, so step one, copy all your files to your pictures folder inside your data directory on demand. And then step two, do the quick posting process to attach the correct photos to the families. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make a correction to mine. So there's mine. Let's fix that. Let's go back over to our proper directory. Data, pictures. Okay, and that's how we would fix those. Okay, sorry about that. Didn't mean to mislead you there, but better option, copy all those files to your data pictures directory on the S drive, and then use the quick posting process. Okay, let's go ahead now and take a look at the home screen. And the next 10 minutes, I want to talk about data cleanup. Now, doing data cleanup is it's not one of those processes that you do on a single sitting. You want to kind of focus on maybe like, setting some time maybe at the end of the month, especially end of year, where you might want to do these steps, okay? All right, so we talked a little bit about keywords earlier. Typically, that's where most of your cleanup happens, is inside keywords. Up on the top left corner, I'm going to click on File, and you're going to see that we have a special area just for sacraments, and we have keywords. So let's go take a look at sacraments first. Now, remember earlier when we were looking at the sacrament names and addresses, we saw that might be an opportunity to do some cleanup. You'll see on the right-hand side, clean up duplicates. Now, before we go through this, I would always recommend that we do a backup, since we're going to change a lot of data at once, potentially. Make a backup before you do it. All right, so the program has already identified there's at least one duplicate for St. Mary that I need to address. Now, these sacrament place names, the way that they get entered into PDS is when you're entering a sacrament. It could be any one of the sacraments, and you're putting in where that sacrament was received. So you always want to choose from a drop-down list of sacrament places when you're entering a sacrament. But if you start typing in a name, then the program will accept it. It'll warn you. It'll say, hey, that name is not in the system. Do you want to add it? So if you say yes, then you may have created a duplicate just by doing that process. So you always want to choose from the drop-down first. Now, if you look here, we've got our St. Mary, and it's presenting to us both versions of St. Mary side by side. The idea here is that we're going to put a check mark next to the sacrament place that's most accurate or correct. Okay, St. Mary, that one's got a period. 231 North 3rd Street, 231. Okay, those are the same, so it went on automatically selected one of those. Phoenix, 85044, those are the same too, so it automatically selected in USA. Okay. All right, so once we choose the best versions of the data for that sacrament place, we put a checkbox on there. Okay. That's saying we're ready to go ahead and process. Now, if I had 5 or 10 or 20 here, I would just keep doing that step until I've reviewed every single one. They have the proper checkboxes in the proper areas, and I've selected it for process. All right, so once I'm done, I can combine those selected, and it's going to go out and fix my data. So any of those sacraments that have the the incorrect place, now have the correct place. I fixed it across my database. Okay, and I have no more duplicates to worry about for sacrament places. That's as hard as it is. I'm going to go ahead and click on close, and let's go take a look at keywords. All right, so let's go take a look. If I click on File, under Keywords, so notice that we have a few different areas that we can address, all right? Now, actually, let me take a couple steps back. Let's stick with sacraments for a moment, because I do want to point out sacrament tab names, the setup here. So the sacrament tab names, what it's listing here is all the sacrament keywords that have been set up in our database. Now, what we're about to do, see how we've got baptism? If I click on the drop down, if I see more than one version of baptism or more than one first communion, so let's say I have first communion and then I have first com, but it's in the same list, then that's an indication that I need to manage that keyword list, okay? So where that gets corrected is under keywords. So back to keywords. Now, that's a sacrament names is going to be down below under members. Okay? And that's going to be right here under sacrament date names. I'm going to click on that. Again, looking for anything that looks like a duplicate. Confirmation, deceased, first communion, marriage, memorial, ordination, reconciliation. Okay, but I'm not seeing any that are duplicate. Okay, but it's very easy to get into that situation. So, so what I would do, and this is just going to be for an example. I'm going to add one, and I'm going to call it first. Okay, click save. So now I've got two versions of First Communion. I got the top one, and I have this one here, First Communion. So if you run into this scenario, what you want to do is click on the Combine Names, and you want to find on the left-hand side the incorrect version, and on the right-hand side the correct version, and add it to the list. And you're going to keep doing that until you've selected all the ones that need to be combined. Now, we combine keywords in PDS instead of deleting keywords so that we're not removing data from our database. If I was to delete the incorrect version of first com, then any sacrament that had first com would now have a blank sacrament place. And that's a bad thing. We don't want to do that. We always want to combine instead of delete. All right, so once we make that correction, we click Combine OK. Only takes a second or two, and we've dealt with that duplicate, and we've corrected the data fields and anybody using that incorrect keyword to the correct keyword. Now, that same thing holds true for things like city-state. Okay? So city-state, I would say, is probably the biggest culprit for duplicates that might be out there. Now, that could take a little bit longer to go through, but what you want to do is just go up and down the list, looking for any versions of city-state names that are, have the same meaning. All right, so I may not have any in my database, but definitely look out for those. It could be something as simple as one having a period on it and one not having one having an extra space in there anywhere after the comma, before the comma. It can happen. And it can happen very easily. I'm going to go back to Ramirez. All right. So let's say I was, making some edits, and I typed in something very obvious, and I saved it, right? Now the program is going to say, hey, wait, that version of that city is not in my database. Do you want to add it? So this should be an indication where you should say, oh, maybe I shouldn't add it. Maybe I typed it in incorrect. Okay. So what you want to do is, see how it says select from the list above the items marked by an arrow? So if I was um, not going to add it, what I would do is I would hit cancel and I would put in the proper spelling, right? But if I ignore that and I go ahead and click on add to the list, I've now created Phoenix as one of my drop-down items. And what I've done really is I've created a duplicate. Now, I can also manage that duplicate from the Manage button. Let me just log that here real quick. So this is that same view. I just accessed it from this Manage button that was right here on the city state. So now, if I click on Combine, I can go find the incorrect version of Phoenix right here and find the correct version of Phoenix. Here, add it to the list. And then I keep doing that with any that need to be combined. Click Combine OK, and just like that, I fixed it. So now, John Ramirez has the correct one. See how easily we corrected it? So just wanted to show you keywords, how to manage those. Combining duplicate families and members. Okay, I know we're right at the top of the hour, and I do apologize, but this should only take about 5 minutes. Hopefully, you can stick with me. If not, I am recording this, and the recording will be made available, so no worries there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the combining of families. All right, moving on. Click on File. You're going to go to Processes, System Processes, and Combine Families. Now, this process is going to first show a options list. What I would recommend that you do is, if you choose to include ID envelope numbers, know that it could give you a number of false positives. If that happens, come back in and just uncheck ID numbers. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And then put a check mark next to merge families that match exactly. So if there's a 100% match, it'll automatically merge those for you. Click the build list, and let's see how many duplicates we have here. It's going to go through my data, and we'll let it do its thing. Okay, didn't find any exact matches, which is fine. It may not find any in your case as well. And then let's go look at all the potential duplicates. So look here. We've got a lot of families whose ID number matches between church and formation, but they're not the same families. If you look at the first and second ones, none of them are matching. So all you do is go back to the rebuild list, uncheck ID, click build, and okay, now in my case, we didn't find any at all. But remember, we saw my name was in there a couple times. So it's matching on name, last name, and also first name and address. So that wasn't enough, but you can still select manually. I'm going to go find those records here in my database. So same last name. So let's go find Mike. Okay, so there's Mike. And then on the bottom, let's go find Michael. Right here. Okay, so we've selected the two. Let's look at the details on the two. So here's Mike and here's Michael. So the reason they didn't match was the different spellings of the first name, and the address information was also different. So what you want to do is keep as much information, valid information about that record. You might also notice that the right side is more accurate than the left side. So if that's the case, go ahead and mark all on the most accurate version of that data. Okay. Moving on down, date registered. Okay, that looks good. And you're only focusing on the red items as well. Okay. Once you've addressed all the red items, okay, there's that photo that we added. Now, when it comes to funds, if both families have fund history, don't worry, we're always going to combine that fund history together. We're not losing any information. Click on Combine Families. Click Yes. All right, so now once you're done combining the families, it'll ask you if you want to go take a look at the members. We'll take a look here. We've combined the family record, but we still have a duplicate Mike and Michael. Okay, so we need to deal with that. So we click on Combine Michael with Mike. Okay, let's review the details and let's make sure we're combining the member records. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep all the valid information for Michael. Okay, that all looks fine. Again, we're only really focusing on the red. Okay, so all that looks good. So let's click on Combine Members. Yes, and yes. All right, so now at this point, looking at Mike, we just have Mike and Kathleen, or Michael and Kathleen now. And I can now click on Close. And more importantly, what happened is if I go into my families and I go to I do a search for Paralysis. Look at that. We only have one Paralysis version, and it's the one that we combined. It's got all the correct information for that one Michael and Kathleen Paralysis record. So we've taken care of the duplicate. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful to you. If you run your combined families process and it finds a number of those, then you're just going to choose the families one at a time and then reviewing that data between the two from that list that it builds. So with that, let me go ahead and come back over to our recording.
Can you stay on for 2 more minutes, Mike, and just go back to the sacramental cleanup and show them how to clean up the priest name, the celebrant of the sacrament? We've had a couple questions on that.
Yes, so let's go back. Give me just one moment. Sorry about that. I had a lot of background noise on my end. Okay, so sacrament celebrants. Is that what I'm understanding what the question was?
Yes, so where we just cleaned up First Communion, they have some, Father Ed or Father Edward.
Okay, so your celebrant list. All right, so what we're talking about, let me just make sure I'm following you. I'm going to go back to I'm going to go to the sacraments area for an individual. Let me just go to a record that has sacraments on it. Bear with me here while I find a record with sacraments. We'll just go ahead and pull one up. All right, so when you're entering information about a sacrament, we've got what's called performed by. That's your celebrant list. Okay. Now, if I click on the drop-down, we can search for the celebrant. We have this list right here. Now, if you need to make corrections to this list, where that's going to be, that's a slightly different area. Let me go to our file and let me go to my keywords right here, celebrant names. Okay, so it's still inside your members. Click on that. And this you'll see is that same list from that drop-down that we were just looking at. Now, just like we have the ability to combine those city-states, we have the same ability to combine duplicate celebrant names. Okay, and this is where it's going to be. Now, this is going to be a little bit more, you want to be a little bit more careful here, is because see how I have Father Smith, Father Jones? I might have Father Smith and I might have a Father John Smith. That doesn't mean that those two get combined. Okay, so you have to be real careful about that when you're combining, especially the names, unless you're 100% sure that the two that you're combining are the same person. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. But if I click on the combine names, it's the same utility. Okay, we choose from the left, the incorrect, the one on the right that we want to keep. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Christy, does that answer that question?
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what the questions were.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to thank you all again for your time spending with Christy and I today. This recording will be made available. Christy, I did share that that the plan is to link these to a YouTube channel. So those YouTube links will be made available. And will you be sending those out to the folks?
Yes, I actually sent out the training one earlier today. So as soon as Fraser gets the link ready, I will send it out to everybody for this training.
Okay, perfect. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Let me go ahead and just quickly turn my camera back on so I'm not being rude. And thank you for all your questions. I didn't get a chance to address all the questions that came into the chat, but I will review those, and I'll work with Christy to get those questions answered for you all. So with that, let me go ahead and end this session and stop sharing my screen. So you all have a great rest of your day, okay? And we'll see you next week.